front of me I have some Game Boy Advance dev stuff for homebrew, and I got some Nintendo DS stuff, but today I want to focus mainly on Game Boy Advance. I have two main types of flash cards here, okay? I have a standard Game Boy Advance flash card. This is a Flash 2 Advance 256 megabit cartridge. Over here is the M3 Lite. Well, they call it a movie player, but what it does is this card actually uses really small trans flash SD cards, where I put my data on this card, insert it inside this Game Boy Advance cartridge, and then insert the cartridge inside the Game Boy Advance. There's no need to buy a cartridge like this and then use your Game Boy Advance in multi-boot mode with a special link cable to send the code to the cartridge, or buying a cartridge with a USB programmer. Now, the advantage of this is you can actually have a lot more storage capacity. This has 32 megabytes, this has 1 gigabyte right now. Now, there are other brands of these loader cards. There's the S3 movie player, I believe it's called, with the Crystal engine. There's also just something called the Game Boy Advance movie player. In my opinion, the S3, or the Super card, is inferior. I think it's actually just a ripoff of the M3, as if they just kind of cloned it. I've heard a lot of bad things about the S3 and the Super card, because you have to go and patch ROMs for file systems and patch your SD card or your compact flash depending on what you're using. In my opinion, the M3 has to be the greatest all-in-one solution. Out of the box, this thing actually has a bootloader, which allows me to play movies, music, read text files, read ebooks, check out pictures. They got a whole bunch of stuff. But let's go to the Game Boy side. Oh, real quick. The M3 also comes with the, because it's the M3 Lite, this is the actual cartridge. You can pull the circuit board out of this one and put it in here and fit it inside your DS Lite. And with a Pass-Me card, you can now boot code off your Game Boy Advance, your Advance cartridge, or the M3 Lite, or the M3 adapter that's designed for the Advance, in your Nintendo DS. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to go and load up the Game Boy Advance SP, and I'll show you a couple of nifty little things for Game Boy Advance Homebrew. Alright, standard Game Boy Advance, booting up. The card is actually going to say not licensed by Nintendo for legal reasons, but whatever. And here's the GBA movie player, the M3 movie player. The main on-screen selections you can have are games, movies, music, ebooks, pictures. I'm not going to get into the file formats of what the movie can play or the audio. You can go to their website and figure it all out. You're going to have to use a type of file converter. Well, let's just pretend that you don't have a fancy schmancy M3 movie player. Let's just pretend you have just a general flash card, and you want some kind of application to use as some kind of multi-boot menu system. And for that, we have Pogo Shell. Pogo Shell is really great because you can actually go and navigate the file system of the card as if it was like a standard file system. We can go through the ROM, the SRAM, or we can go through the what they call the CRAM ROM FS. If you go to the ROM, you can go, they have plugins and stuff that are really great, you know, the NES emulation, Super Nintendo, Genesis, Atari, 2600, you know, really great stuff. They also have movie player plugins, they've also got textbook reader plugins. So through this shell you can do pretty much every single thing that the M3 card can do. It's just, you're limited to whatever space your card already has. We also have a movie player. There's an application that you can run on Windows, and it'll actually convert movie files into Game Boy media format. So here's a quick test run. Of course, it doesn't have the best resolution, and it's, you know, the bit rate's kind of low and the screen's kind of small, but you know, if you want to put a couple of music videos on your Game Boy Advance, or, you know, you got a couple of really quick, cute clips you want to go and show your friends off YouTube or whatever, alright, it's one more thing your Game Boy Advance can do. Next runner-up is what they call MP3 Advance. What it does is it allows you to play MP3s or converted music formats on your Game Boy Advance. Me, personally, I feel it's kind of foolish to have any kind of music on a Game Boy Advance without an appropriate shell like Pogo Shell. I think Pogo Shell has an MP3 player plugin, because this program, the Music Player Advanced, will actually, you'll have to convert all your MP3s. What I did with this one is I created a TTY terminal transmission, so I can use my Game Boy Advance to go and send predefined TTY terminal messages. So if you got a TTY terminal decoder, try it. Yeah, I'll give it to you one more time, see if you can actually decode it. And to be God honest, I have absolutely no idea what it says. This is actually a really old ROM from a very long time ago. As a lot of people know, I'm a big emulation fan, especially the NES. I love my NES hacking. I love my NES ROMs. Okay, NES emulator. Yay! You have to also understand that the screen resolution will not match, like an NES screen resolution will not match the Game Boy Advance, so there will be some artifacting. But they've actually compensated. All I can say is check out the NES emulator for Game Boy Advance and check out the features. It's called Pocket NES. I'll put some links into the show notes, but hey, it's NES in your pocket. Of course, classic disclaimer, you know, running ROMs is illegal, it could be, blah blah blah, I don't care. There's also Super Nintendo emulation, which, to be honest, is a little bit on the laughable side. It's more for novelty. It's very difficult to play, especially because you don't have enough buttons on the Game Boy Advance to, you know, no XY button. However, you can plug a you're loud. You can actually plug a Super Nintendo controller into your Game Boy Advance SP or Game Boy Advance serial port slot. Great, fun stuff. There's also other emulation like Atari 2600, Zilog, Z80, Genesis, TurboGrafx 16, I think. I mean, there's a whole bunch of emulation for the Game Boy Advance. The only thing I can say is, you know, choose your emulator and figure out which ones work best for you. Next on the list of fun, useful is the Game Boy Advance Picture Slideshow. It does quite that. It's a picture slideshow. Use some software, a PC side, and you make a Game Boy Advance ROM file of pictures. When I was in college, I was actually able to use this to put a whole bunch of you know, crib sheets and I guess you call them cheat sheets with formulas and just references like, you know, Ohm's law, Faraday's law, Kirchhoff's law, Boolean algebra, a whole bunch of great stuff on the on my Game Boy Advance. And then if I needed some kind of data sheet or some kind of information, I can pull it up right there on my Game Boy Advance. In fact, my teacher made a snide comment about playing games in class, and when I showed him that I was actually using my Game Boy to pull up data sheets on microcontrollers and components that we're using, and I actually scanned some of my textbooks and put them on my Game Boy Advance, he promptly shut the fuck up. Well, there you have it, some general purpose Game Boy Advance homebrew. You got some really great stuff. Something I wasn't able to actually show you guys was the Game Boy Advance GPS. The Game Boy Advance has a serial port on the back, and what a very talented individual is able to do is, using just standard household components, wire a serial GPS receiver into the Game Boy Advance. From there, he created a computer program that runs on Windows. I think it's Windows only, sorry everyone. Where it uses Google Maps and input from you to create a ROM file, a Game Boy Advance ROM file, where it'll take the signal off the GPS through the serial port and display on a map on the Game Boy Advance screen where you are. It'll also give you your latitude, your longitude, your heading, all that stuff, waypoints. I think that's pretty interesting because a lot of us will have some kind of GPS unit, whether it's USB or serial. USB ones do have a serial connection on them somewhere. You just have to go and kind of get in there. And that's why I got Velcro on the top of my Game Boy Advance and on the bottom. Put the GPS on the top, the battery pack on the bottom. You can use your Game Boy Advance SP for geocaching, or as a general purpose GPS unit. So, you know, Game Boy Advance Homebrew brings us a GPS unit, movie players, music players, picture slideshow, really great homebrew games and applications like Cool Paint, Arkanoid Advanced, a couple of Mario derivatives, a couple of Sonic games were made. You got some really great games, you got some really great applications, so, oh, plus emulation. Thumbs up for emulation. Thumbs down for bootlegging ROMs. Screw you if you want to go and steal games.
Hi everyone, my name is Codename Gamma, and I'm here to show you how to install Linux on your Xbox by shoving this little penguin up the Ethernet port of your Xbox and making it run nicely with your other Xbox applications without losing that original functionality. So let's go ahead and get started. So what we're going to do is start Internet Explorer or whatever your browser is, and we're going to go to xdsl.org. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to download Damn Small Linux. And it's a small download, about 50 megabytes. Not very bad. So go ahead and just go to Xbox Linux SourceForge site. And go down over here, and we're going to go to XDSL 0.5. And go ahead and you'll want to go ahead and click download. Scroll down again, and we want to go ahead and do XDSL 0.5.zip. And what you're going to want to do is scroll down again and just go ahead and download it right there. I'm going to use FlashGet because my connection sucks and it can resume. And we're going to go ahead and just let this download. And yeah, like I said before, it's not that big. Actually, this is 43 megabytes. So once it's done, go ahead and exit out of there and go to where you downloaded it. I just have it on the desktop right now, and you're going to open it up, and you're going to want to go ahead and copy the README and the XDSL ISO. And just extract those to your desktop or whatever your working folder is. Open up the ISO, and in there you have a folder called Noptics and a bunch of them, and then default.xbe. I already made a folder on the desktop, so which I'm going to extract, called XDSL. And then you're just going to want to go ahead and drag the Noptics folder in. Let that extract, default.xbe, linuxboot.xbe, and then go into Noptics and drag the last two files in. Go ahead and go back, and now we can go ahead and close out of this. And we're going to want to leave this open because now we got to make some changes. So you might want to go ahead and open that with WordPad and make that big so you can read everything. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be doing an FTP install, and you're going to want to go ahead and copy that title, DSL, all that stuff that I'm highlighting right now. Copy it, and we can minimize that, and then go to linuxboot.config, and we want to edit this file as well. You can open it with WordPad and replace all the lines with the one that you just copied from README. And we want to close that. Now what we're going to do is we're just going to close everything up, and we're going to go ahead and FTP into our Xbox and copy everything where it's supposed to be. So you're ready to go ahead and connect. As usual, mine's 192.168.2.3, Xbox, username, password, Xbox. We're going to go to drive E. And you're just going to want to go ahead and copy everything into the root of drive E. So we're going to go where we have it, the XDSL, and then just copy everything into drive E. And let that copy over. It's not too big, so it's not going to take that long, unless you're on a really slow 10 megabit network, but even then, it's only 15 megs. And go ahead and disconnect, and we're going to go ahead and boot into our Xbox now, after we clean everything up. Okay, so we're now on the Xbox side of things, and we're gonna boot it up. And of course we have our Xbox Media Center. So now the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and go to that location where we copied default.xbe and we're going to run it. So that goes down to My Files and Drive E and scroll down to default.xbe and run it by pressing A. And there we go. This is the Linux bootloader, and we're going to run from FATX on E, and it's going to start booting. And you're going to notice this looks a lot like any Linux boot, and this is damn small Linux. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to let this boot like normal. If you have a USB keyboard, it would be a good idea to plug it in using that USB adapter that you used for your USB stick. And then as you can see, the desktop came up and we have a virtual keyboard. It's not quite done loading. Once you see the bars back there, that's your gauges and stuff. And that's when you can tell it's fully done loading. And you use the gamepad to move the mouse around. So that's how you can do it. If you don't have a keyboard, you can use a virtual keyboard, even though it sucks. I don't use it. I have a USB keyboard, so I'm going to exit out of that. And the first thing I want to show you is Firefox. And as well, no, actually you can see here that the first thing, we have a bunch of applications. We have Firefox, we have a writing program, we have a PDF viewer, we have a multimedia program. So the first thing we're going to do is set up our network card. We're going to get a system, and we're going to go net setup and then net card config. We're going to run it, and then it's going to ask you use DHCP. If you have a DHCP on your network, your computer automatically gets the IP address. You want to go ahead and go yes to that. Since I don't, I'm going to have to put in all these settings manually, and these will save every time XDSL boots. It will automatically go to the IP address you tell it to this time. It's just a bunch of these simple questions. Okay, now it's done. It's setting those network settings and saving them, and now it's going to exit. So now that your network is set up, you can go ahead and go to Firefox here, and you should hopefully get to the home page. And as you can see, this is Firefox, so you should be able to go just about anywhere. And to show you that, I'm actually going to go to BSoD.org, BSoDTV.org, sorry. As you can see, we have graphics, and it's all loads up, and it looks pretty nice on Firefox. If it asks you about these security certificates, just click cancel or whatever, I don't know. Whatever you want to do. Yeah, and it's a full web browser. You can do downloading, you can do email, you can do whatever you need to from here. Then we're going to go ahead and we're going to go file, and then we can quit. That's all. I mean, it's Firefox, you know how to use Firefox. So the next thing I want to show you is this My DSL over here. And what this will allow you to do is download apps from the internet that will automatically download once they're done downloading, or install once they're done downloading. Sorry. And so we're going to go to net, and there's one specific application I want to show you called XChat. It's down here way at the bottom. And we're going to go ahead and click download. And then it's going to ask you where you want to download it. I just download it to the temp. It's going to download. I mean, it's not a big download. I think it's like 1.5 MB. So as long as you have a pretty decent network, I mean, you should be able to use the XDSL downloader. And I mean, these apps are pretty simple to do. I mean, there's tons of apps in there. You can just pick from almost whatever. So we're going to go ahead and run XChat, and we're going to actually go into the BSoD IRC chat room. If you've never been in there, I mean, maybe your computer goes down or whatever, and you have XDSL and you need help from us to get it working. This would be a great alternative if you don't have another PC that you can get on IRC with. So you want to go ahead and set your nicknames. Refer to Mustang's IRC segment if you don't know how to use IRC at all. I think that was in episode 2 or 3 maybe. Don't quote me on that because I'm not exactly sure. We're going to go ahead and we're going to click New Server. And server name, we're just going to label this BSoD TV or whatever. It doesn't matter, and the server is irc.bsodirc.org. And you're going to leave the port the same, leave all of that the same. Go ahead and use the auto connect or don't. It doesn't matter. I'm going to go ahead and turn the proxy off and go to OK. And we're going to go ahead and connect to it. As you can see, it's connecting. It's actually going through the internet and connecting to the server, and there we go. We are connected to the server. Now we're going to have to use the join command and join the room IRC or BSoD, which is the main chat room. And there you go. You can see everyone is logged in. You can type your messages in here and start chatting right off. So yeah, if you ever need computer tech support or you messed up doing a hard drive installation and you can't get your computer working, this would be a great alternative to contact us. So since that's done, I'm going to go ahead and we're going to quit. And you know, there's a DSL downloader. There's almost 200 applications, if not more. So I mean, if you need something, there's a bunch there. There's also, you know, a built-in FTP client. There's a built-in VNC client. There's tons of stuff. So what we're gonna do is, there's also a bunch of servers. If you go to System and you go to Daemons, there's an SSH server, and there's an NFS server, web server, and an FTP client or an FTP server also. So if you need to host those files on your network for like a LAN party, or at your office or whatever, you could just copy your files onto your Xbox, pick it up, and go. And of course, the DSL applications will be under the MyDSL. That's there. So, you know, that's pretty much it. It's a small client, easy to configure, easy to use. So we're gonna go ahead and we're just gonna shut it down. And of course, it shuts down like any other Linux client. And it's pretty fast. You know, it's better than. I was going to show you Gen 2X, but it was way too slow and laggy because it has to do a lot of swapping. So now if you turn your Xbox back on, it's going to just come up like a normal Xbox. There's no... You can still use it as for its original functionality, play your games or watch videos or whatever. But now you can do Linux on it and browse the web. So I hope you liked my segment, and visit my website, www.codenamegamma.com, and check my tutorials for on how to do this installation, and check the show notes. This has been Codename Gamma, and have a wonderful day.
In this segment, I'm going to show you how to use your radio scanner to intercept data. Here's my Bearcat BC700A scanner. What you're going to have to do is something called a discriminator mod. There's a chip inside here. If you remember my previous segment, there's a chip in here that'll basically discern between what is audio and what is static. What we need to do is we need to go and tap in before this filter chip called the discriminator and bring an external connection to the outside of the case. So I'm going to go and give you an alternate view of what you have to do. Here's my scanner. I saved you the trouble of watching me unscrew boring screws, yippee skippy, and I take the cover off. Now there's a chip in here that's called the discriminator chip. Basically what it does is it's the actual audio filter that discerns static from actual radio signal. That chip is right here inside my unit. If you go on Google, I'll put this in the show notes, and you type in discriminator mod, you'll actually get a list of known discriminator chips and what pin you have to go and tie into. So I flip my unit over, and I soldered a wire onto the appropriate pin, and I soldered another wire to ground. Now you can use any kind of the RF shielding. You can use the negative wire on your power input, or you can actually just use the shielding itself over here. I then drilled a hole inside the case and mounted a standard headphone jack. This is relatively simple. Of course, as you see, there's a lot of unpopulated space in here. If you're using a radio like my Pro 95, you're not going to have much room to do that. And of course, newer radios are going to have smaller outline chips, so you might want to go and open up your radio and check out the size of all the components inside and have some decent soldering skills. Although, if you saw episode 2 and you've been practicing your soldering, by now you should be more than adequate enough to do this mod. Now, to get the data to your computer, there's two ways of doing it. You can either hook a headphone jack or whatever connector you decide to use from here into your audio card and basically spit out the unfiltered, unedited raw audio to your sound card and use an application that uses that audio and processes it. Or what you can do is create a circuit that'll plug into here and take the raw audio and turn it into actual binary data. I'm going to show you the method of hooking it into your audio card because it's relatively a no-brainer and it's relatively supported nowadays. So I'm going to go put my scanner back together and I'm going to show you the PC side. PDW is software used to decode pagers. You might think not too many people use pagers nowadays, but a lot of hospitals do. First thing you have to do is go to your interface and set up your audio properties. You have to select the recording controls and then select whether you're using microphone or line input. Once you do that, you just have to adjust your audio levels to make sure you have a good audio input. Otherwise, you'll get corrupted data. From this point on, you just sit back and relax and wait for the data to come in. Now, this is where things get a little creepy because you can actually hear interference, you can hear data coming in. Now, like I said, you might not think too many people use pagers nowadays, but hospitals and lawyers use them quite often because they don't interfere with a lot of technology. And here we have pager data coming in. A little bit about law. It might be a crime in some states or countries to intercept certain forms of radio communications and decode them. I'm not sure. You might want to go and check in on that. But I know for a fact in the United States of America, intercepting pagers does not constitute a crime. Now, you can also go and intercept mobile data terminals, trunking data, EDACs, and all that fun stuff. I'll actually put in some links to the show notes of different types of data that you can actually listen to and intercept using just a sound card and a computer.
Hey everybody, this is Xprov from xprov.com, and I thought today I'd give you a few basics over how to do some basic soldering and make it look good. Because I know Fox has gone on there, a couple of projects, and they look all great and everything, but we never exactly got the grasp on how to get that perfect soldering job on those PCB boards. So today I'm going to give you the ideas of what supplies you're going to need, what works best, what works worse, good techniques, good irons, you know, little basic things like that to save you time, effort, money. Alright, so we'll start off with the basic. You got your standard soldering iron. Now, I got a whole supply of them down here, to be honest, but it gives you a basic idea. Now, this is a different style soldering iron, as they like to call them, but this guy is basically a static one. It doesn't change. It's between 30 and 35 watts, great for real small soldering jobs, but it doesn't have a hot can't talk today. It doesn't have a hot melting temperature at all. So if you're doing any kind of large joints, it's not the guy for you. So we go to the other end of the extremes, and we've got the soldering gun. Now these guys are great for real hot applications. They're great for real large joints, but if you're trying to do anything small, or you're trying to do work with any equipment that's, how should we say, not very tolerant with heat, then basically you're screwed with one of these guys. So we like to go on something with the middle, which I've actually already got set up at my soldering station. However, it is what we call a variable wattage solder. We got a little dial down here that gives us a different temperature range, so we can choose how hot we want it to turn heat up to, what types of solder we want to work with, etc. And it's got a real nice small point, so we can work with smaller joints. Now, I personally don't like this model because it's got a very long neck, so it's a little difficult to work with, but if you can find something out there, Weller brands and stuff like that, I mean, this is a $25 Canadian fix, whereas you can go upwards of $180, so, you know, for the price you're getting, it does the job. Alright. So that gives you an idea of your soldering irons. I mean, for the most part, I say around 45 to 50 watts is generally a nice area to do soldering, but once again, that's dependent on the joints that you're doing and the small stuff you're working with. Alrighty, your next best friend, alcohol. Now, this is, in this case, this is isopropyl. You may know it as rubbing alcohol. It's purely, in the end, you're wanting to clean off all your joints. You want to make it the nice clean solder. You want to make there be no dirt in your joints. You don't want any particles in there that could basically cause you not to get the best connection, because that's what we're going for, is the best possible connection with the least possible chance of damage. So with these guys, in combination with a standard little brush of some sort, you just go, it would allow you to scrub off your joints, make them all clean, make them all perfect. You're also going to need it clean for what some people love, some people hate. I personally think it's great for making it look nice. Flux. Simply put, it's tree sap. What does it do? You apply heat to it. Wherever it's touching, it transfers the heat like water. It's like boiling a cup of water. You attach heat to one point, it goes and distributes it all around. That's really nice for when you're trying to get a joint and you have this whole solder platter of some sort, and you basically want to go and you want to share the heat around so the solder will spread out nice and evenly instead of just staying chunked in one spot, or even on your iron. It happens. And to be honest with you, those are the basic tools, I mean, to doing soldering. There's a lot of extra pieces of benefits. I'll be showing you. I might be using this guy, I might not. This is what we like to call a third hand. Now, I actually went and added on my own little third hand to give it a fourth hand in essence. These guys you can pick for about $10 American down at your local Radio Shack, or up here in Canada they call it the Source. And the whole idea is, when you're doing a project, you want to be able to hold it in place. So, got a board here, got a whole bunch of crap on it, want to add something to it, we can go and clip it on so that it's anchored in place, so that it literally acts like a third hand. You can hold your iron. Up to this point, you can be feeding in solder with your other hand, and you don't have to hold this in place and worry about it falling out. So, that's an extra little benefit to it. Alright, so now, we got our tools, but once again, tools are tools. We know how to use them, but we need to learn the best technique. So let's go over to the soldering bench. Alrighty, here we are over at the soldering bench here, aka my dress. General practices when it comes to soldering. Number one, I've got all these rings on here right now. Now that's not a good idea. Why? If you slide your iron over, metal heats up, it conducts very well. So even though it doesn't look like it would hurt, yeah, it would hurt, because you have to pull that hot metal off your fingers, and that would not be good. So basically, basic idea is take off any kind of thing, anything that could get in the way of soldering, especially metal-wise, or anything that could conduct. Even though your skin can slightly burn, it takes a good time to hold it against your finger. I mean, if you bump it, you bump it. Everyone does. Number two, you have to make sure you have a good eyesight view of everything. So, in my case, I got long hair. I am going to put on a hat. However, the main keys for the soldering is make sure you're on a surface that won't be susceptible to heat. So, in this case, I'm on an oil-based, some kind of paint thing that basically it won't catch fire or anything. If solder lands on it, it'll solidify. It won't fall off. If you were doing it on wood, you can sometimes get away with it. Any kind of fabric, no, I would not recommend it at all. But alright, let's get on with it. Now, I'm not sure if the camera will come through clearly here. We can see my board. It looks relatively good, but some of these joints in here, the board, and really in essence, is quite dirty. You can actually see there's some burn marks right around this area right here. So that's where our alcohol comes right in hand here. we can actually just use it in there. And the nice thing about alcohol is it's got a low boiling point, so it'll basically evaporate right in our air. So you can get right in there and scrub all you want. And be really vigorous about it, because we want it to look as clean as can be. We want it to be as clean as we can be, so that we don't have anything on there that could catch, burn, and give you bad fumes. Now, one thing I didn't mention before is you want to be in an area that's very well ventilated. Why? These are toxic fumes we're working with. This is metal. This is flux. So we got literally evaporated tree sap in the air. Not good for your lungs. So, by the way, this board that I am working on here, it's actually an old transformer here. So I'm just going to be soldering on a capacitor here to show you how to do it on. The fact is, I am not actually doing this to actually use it for any reason. So I'm just going to solder it to the best looking joints in here, and that's one thing. You want to make sure you're always soldering to the right point and know what you have ready. Plan it all out before you even do it. Haven't even turned my iron on yet. Clean her all up. So today we're going to be working with our standard little capacitor. In a later episode I will hopefully talk about the basics of capacitors and electronics and stuff, just in case you don't understand. Well, this is an electrolytic capacitor. This little guy here, it's polarized, so it means the electricity goes only one way. So when you're soldering these, you want to make sure you get it the right way. If you get it the wrong way, they're not good. But for this demo, it doesn't matter, because we're not using it. So, board's all cleaned up here. I'll just be working with a larger joint. We can work with any of these smaller ones, but the fact is, I mean, it's easier to see on camera to see how you got the proper joints. Now, on most boards today, if you look at them, they have any kind of joints. Sometimes they do them good, sometimes they do them bad. But what you generally want to get is you want to still be able to see the original outline of this wire going into it, and you want to see it as basically like a bend, kind of like an inverse squared function. I know that's probably a bad description of it, but I'll somehow import a diagram into this video here and then add some stuff in the show notes, image-wise. But the basic idea is, for any of these little guys, you want to still be able to see the wire coming through, but you want it to look like it's all one part, and you don't want to see it look like a dome. You want to see it as basically, yeah, it's not going to come through very clearly, I know that, but yeah, I'll take the diagrams or put it right into video or a close-up screenshot of some sort. But anyways, now my iron, I think I'm still waiting for it to heat up here. This one little accessory here that I'm actually using right here, it's a little holder for my soldering iron, and it's really nice because it allows you to hold the iron when you're not using it. And as well, a little sponge down here. How it works, you just soak her up, and then once you're done doing soldering, clean off the tip, make it look nice. In my case, yeah, I'm getting a high wattage here, so as I said, it doesn't hurt to go over, because what the temperature is going to determine is how fast your solder melts. There's different temperature solders and such, but for the idea today, we're just going to, actually I'm going to show you both. You know what, I'll show you desoldering and I'll show you soldering. So let's get a hole here ready. Let's say we want to desolder the power adapter in this case, because there's many use of these adapters. If something goes wrong with any kind of board and you don't want to fix it, or you have a project idea for it, well, you can just take these things right off. So you clean it right up. One little accessory I didn't show before, this is called solder wick. Now, how does it work? It's simply put, coiled copper wire. When you put solder on there and you apply the iron to it, it sucks the solder right out onto the wire. You snip it off, you throw it out. Dirt cheap stuff, excellent to work with. So, let's see here. I apologize, this is the first time I've been setting up this camera view, so I have to keep checking to make sure it looks good. So, now we are going to go and say we're going to take off one of these joints. Now, I'll hopefully be able to, in the post-editing, zoom in on how this looks. But right now I'm just pre-fluxing them. I'm going to be rushing this just so we're not going to be sitting here all day watching me do this, because it's a slow process. You want to take your time on it. You want to make sure you do it right. If you screw it up, sometimes you can't go back. Sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. So now we fluxed up the joints here. We got our iron. Place the iron up to it. See your smoke there? And she will suck right up. Now, just in doing this, I actually, with different solders on different boards, you have different temperatures. So right now I was just using the standard one of mine. It took a little bit longer. So you have two options. You can be patient with the rest of them, or in my case, if you're ignorant, you can go and crank up your temperature. I'm going to go up to about 50, 55 watts. And so what happens is it just sucks it right in, hold it up to there just lightly, and you can actually pull it along, and it will suck the solder right onto this extra sheet. Now, I was being flimsy here, and it actually transferred the heat so well that it transferred it to the other old joint that we had just removed it from. So, once again, technique and time. Right now I don't give an ass, because I want to show you this in the end. So, we can use the alcohol to clean it off afterwards. It's not exactly very clear here, but basically it just went and it removed all the solder along that, along those pins there. Now, I'll just take off the other 5 here. This will be cut out in the video here. It'll be sped up so we can actually get to the actual soldering part. Alright. Okay. There we go. The adapter's right off. The joints are very dirty right now, actually, so we will clean those off again with our friendly diddly alcohol over here. And, you never want to actually touch the board. You want to just touch the parts that you're working with. So, you just make sure she's all clean. And it looks like when it just went into the factory. Alrighty, now time for the actual soldering job. I didn't get a chance really much to talk about how clean these joints should be and how on both sides how they should be clean. On your capacitors, you're going to want the leads clean because essentially, you're binding metal to metal. You don't want any kind of dirt in there to prevent that bind from happening. As well, in this case, I am not properly doing this to be used, as I said before, so I am not too concerned about this. Later, for your information, I'll do a segment on this later. This capacitor is actually polarized. What does that mean? It means that you put it in the wrong way, your equipment just may not work. So, we're going to have to make sure we get this right. Now, as you can see, yeah, you can't actually see it, my capacitor, it'll go right through the hole. It'll fall down. In this case, it kind of pinned itself out. On a normal one, it would go all the way to bottom. You don't want that. You can't solder that, right? And you want to have room on your board so you can see what you're connecting to later. So this is where your third hand may come into hand. Pardon the pun, may become handy. So it actually doubles as a heat sink in some cases, which is nice. But it's just a matter purely of positioning it properly. Now, this capacitor is kind of big, kind of a pain in the ass, so we'll just do it for idealistic purposes. We'll bend our pins in and kind of mount it a little bit up higher. As I said, this ain't a great job. We could clean it up later, but this is rush for time. I want to make sure you want to make sure it looks good, but I don't care right now. Alright, so when doing heat transfer, you want to transfer both parts, right? You don't want any kind of little blobs here and there. You want to actually make a full connection, and you actually want the solder to go through here to the bottom. You want on both parts. This is what kind of sucks about these boards is solder also follows the rules of gravity, so it goes downwards. So it may look like your joint's looking fine, but you may have this huge gob on the bottom which may transfer to other leads, and sometimes it's not good, but right now we're learning just the basics. Normally doing one-side stuff. So now, go down here. See the smoke line, see the heat transfer, you'll see the bubbling in there. Add a little bit of solder to break this heat barrier basically, and then literally it's just feed in until it looks pretty good. I'd say that's fair. Let it cool down there. I'll just do the other side here for reference sake. Alright, and then let's, as I said, this is not a good technique, but I'll do it just so it looks nice here. Alrighty. We have a vertically standing capacitor. Scrub around, make it look nice. It's still hot here, so it's smoking. But that's okay, because alcohol will just evaporate and it doesn't do any damage to it. With some of these you can scrub really vigorously. With other joints they are very very lightly soldered on. When you get to real small PCBs and into cool, nice microcircuitry there, you have to be a little more delicate. But with these huge joints, you can just go right at it to make sure that there's no excess crap around it, to be honest. So, actually on this board that I was working with, sometimes these boards are double-sided with their plating. On this board, there's actually nothing on the other side, but you can see the wire. This camera, as I said, is not the greatest, but the wires are coming right out. On the other side, we've got our joints nice and rounded out. I'll try and take photos of this. It's, these cameras ain't great when it comes to autofocusing close-ups, but basically it goes up like I think it's concave. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that curvature that kind of it's hard to show on camera. I will just draw it out in there. But anyways, that's your basic joint right there. That's how you connect two leads, and that's how simple it is, honestly. Now, I can try and give you an example here of why the flux in the alcohol is really nice. Well, say working on this guy here. Don't have flux, it gets all uneven. You can add it in there, and in this occasion I'm hot enough, but you can see when I pulled it away, it went and it left this little divot on it. It's kind of hard to see here, but you can just see right in that brightness level on this little guy right here that it's actually kind of curved. You don't want that. You want a nice smooth fillet. So that's your basic breakdown of soldering. I can give you more tips in the show notes, but other than that, there's very little difference to this and any other soldering techniques. But this is the one that you'll be working with the most, especially in projects like Fox works on, or anything like that. If you want to take it beyond the prototype stage. Alright, everybody. This is XProv again from XProv.com. Feel free to visit my website, although I haven't really set it up yet, to be honest with you. Either way, I'll leave this all in the show notes, and I'll see you guys in the forums or on the chat.